Hello and welcome to our daily sketching routine. It is Saturday, November 30th, 2024, and today's topic will be artistic checkpoints. And before we begin, welcome back if you're returning, welcome if you're new. I sketch and post every day, and I set timers. And for these deep dives, which is what these recent videos this week has been about, I'll set 10-minute timers, and they've been kind of long, between 40 minutes to almost an hour sometimes, so that's alright. So yeah, that's kind of what's going to happen. It's a deep dive, and I want to talk about art and the artistic journey and different techniques and ideas I have. And so with that said, I want to call it artistic checkpoints, and I like to use at least the first session to get warmed up. So I'll post links to, it's basically a series for the past few days. Basically this whole week is about intermediate, but also the artistic journey, but the intermediate level, but also beginner level. So it's a lot of different things, and definitely for this week I'll link everything together in the description, but going forward we'll see what happens. I mean, I don't plan it out that much. I have a list or an idea of things, and also the previous videos gives me ideas. But I want to call this one artistic checkpoints because on this page, and again this will be linked in the description, in the video where I talk about the artistic journey, and specifically my artistic journey, but I made it kind of applicable to different people and the artistic journey itself. I talked about something called like a checkpoint, because, and I think of it that way because on the journey there's going to be milestones, but a mile is just a metaphor, so it can take a while, and are the same thing. They're made up of a lot of different milestones, so it'll take you in longer sometimes. And so that's kind of maybe a good way to think about it, is achievements, for the sake of this analogy, is made up of a lot of milestones that go into it. And then a checkpoint is sort of the in-between, because sometimes even a milestone can be kind of take a long time to get to. At least well, it depends on the experience of it, because it may still be a mile, but I mean, if there's a lot of resistance and obstacles and challenges, then that mile is going to be a lot harder. So I wanted to go over that just to begin with, and then as I was talking about it, I did this sketch from imagination, but it showed a lot of intermediate art concepts, such as composition, values, perspective, and stuff like that, line work. And then that led to a couple of videos about this, so I'll talk about this real quick. So I'll put up a before picture, and I had already done this one. I didn't do anything else to this character, so it turned into basically character design, and then I worked on this character, and then I ended up overworking this one, so I had to paint over it. And to do that, I just use like a white, I have this Sharpie white marker, paint marker, so I just paint it over the face and then drew it back in. And it's not gonna be as dark. You can see that it grays it out when you use this pen on top of the white paint. So you kind of have to use the black paint marker to kind of go back in and add details, which I actually kind of like that process. It's more painterly. I mean, I think this is the better picture. It's a sketch, but it's more painterly looking, or it's looser. But I think it captures more of the character. But I kind of like the other one too. And it's funny because in the previous video I was literally just talking about if you overwork when you're using a pen, when you overwork, you basically have to start over, paint over it, because once you put down the pen lines, there's really no way to remove it. And it could just be, well, what happened was, you can see that, like, I'm happy with this one, and I built it up more gradually, which is what I was showing in the previous video, and I like it. I mean, that's, in some ways, it's not guaranteed that you're going to get a good picture, but it's more controlled. And in this one, I was already using a pretty thick line, and plus it was black and white, so when you make marks on the face, it's not as subtle. And yeah, like once you do that, then you kind of have to keep going with it, and at some point it just kind of got overworked. Like I lost the picture. So, and then when I redo it, I just make it a point to not like be inspired by the previous sketch, but not try to replicate it. You kind of just have to let it go. But I would rather repaint it than just leave like a bad sketch just staring at me. So with that said, in this area, so in the previous video I talked about wanting to, it was called intermediate rendering techniques. And then these kind of became, I consider these concept art for characters. I wouldn't necessarily say that they're character designs just yet, but like almost. Maybe the first pass or the first stage of it, and that the next one would be kind of nailing down the look, and also their portraits, so they're not really the costume. So it's a good start though. So with that in mind, I wanted to continue just to fill out the sketchbook page. But at the same time, as I was thinking about that, so I have a figure drawing and a basic drawing and other playlists that if you check it out, if you really want to have a bit more of a how-to or tutorial or just detailed, those are worth checking out, if I do say so myself. But I think what I'm saying here is starting to go more towards like the intermediate, but I mean, it's still useful if you're a beginner at art or at drawing. But just speaking of drawing, it's a really important skill if you want to do art, because you'll notice that even amongst this, so it all fits. That's one thing that might be good to notice, is that even though they're different, it still goes together. And I won't be able to explain all of that in this video, but part of that is the drawing, part of it is the style and stuff like that, but a lot of it is the drawing is really what's keeping it. And then of course, because I use color, there's also that's the way you use the color is also part of the style. And that's part of the vision, that if you're at the intermediate stage, you're maybe at first you might just kind of be copying, and that's okay, but you want to kind of move away from just copying. But yeah, I mean, I get that sometimes that's just how you start out. I mean, that's how I started out. I just kind of looked at people that were doing stuff more advanced than me and just seeing, oh, okay, like here they use brushwork, and here they use cross-hatching, and sometimes they outline things, stuff like that, and that's what style is. So yeah, I mean, if you're practicing and studying, then nothing wrong with that. And I'd also get ideas from other artists and stuff too. So it's just that the more you develop your skills, the more you kind of want to, kind of like with music, you kind of want to create your own sound. And so you kind of want to create your own look. So yeah, what I'm going to do is, in this video, so I'm calling it artistic checkpoints, and rather than something like character design, which we can talk about. I mean, I am going to talk about that. So that's 10 minutes. I'll start another 10-minute timer. So it'll still be character design, but I'm not going to specifically go into it, although I'll demonstrate it. I'll be sketching. But I'm going to put these, because like I said, they're not true character designs, they're concepts. But then the more you draw them, the more they start to have a look. But I want to draw them in kind of a scene, so I'm going to take this, partly because it goes along with the series that this week is about. And I'll just use this as like the checkpoint, but I'll create an illustration. And part of why I want to do that is I already have it thumbnailed, basically. This is like a sketch or a thumbnail sketch. So I already have a lot of information right here. Like I know what the scene looks like, the lighting and stuff. So I don't have to redraw this, or I don't have to like think about it again. I'll redraw it, but I'll just redraw this, the study. So that's what I'm going to be looking at. However, I'm going to incorporate these potential character designs. Let's just start sketching here. So what I'm going to do is, in these ones, I had started with like a green color. I'm going to go with a lighter color because you'll notice on this side, because I want to blend it in to this collage thing, montage thing. I'm going to use the yellow because I felt like this was even a little too dark. Now you can use pencil, so anything that I'm doing here, you can simplify it by using pencil and then ink over it. It's the same thing. Maybe the difference would be color. That's part of why I'm using like this light yellow color, because color does stuff. So when I was using this, for example, that's part of what threw me off on this one, because it does affect the drawing. So with that said, let's go ahead and start sketching. If you want to just use these videos to listen to at first, which is probably how they're kind of the best way to do it, then yeah, it just kind of keeps you company. So what I'm going to do, like I said, I'm going to do a couple of things. One, I want to make, they're going to be kind of thumbnails of these characters because I don't have that much room. And I might not do all three of them. Maybe I'll do, maybe my feeling is I kind of want to do these two just to kind of get started. I might only have enough room to do that much. And also because of the technique, because these I didn't really paint. That one is more painted. So it looks bolder, I guess. So yeah, I'm going to go with this just to blend it in a little bit more. So yeah, just to get started, yeah, I'm going to draw the kind of the scene that I just showed you. However, it's going to be zoomed in because I need to draw these characters. So I feel like by doing this, a lot of it is the demonstration will be the helpful thing. So I don't have to design the tree. It's already been designed. But that's what's good about doing thumbnails, is that like that little thumbnail up at the top of the page. Because if you start kind of big like this, it's kind of harder to figure out like the design of stuff. same with like character designs. Like if I were gonna do the figure, so we'll go ahead and do that. I might only be able to fit one right here. That's fine because of the way that I drew this tree. So when you're doing like a character design and you're starting, you could either start kind of like, I'll either do, if I feel like drawing a face, I'll do this, like a portrait. That's one way, and then you kind of get the feel for it. The other is if you're doing like a figure, if you want to start with like the costume or something. Show this in the camera. Then I like to start sort of small, and so it's like the equivalent of this, where I don't worry too much about the detail. So these proportions I talked about already in other videos, but you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to keep it kind of simple because I don't know what the character looks like really, like the costume. And I'm using this light color so that I can sketch and still draw over it. So this is, like I said, I'm going to keep it pretty basic. Part of it is just to talk about the artistic checkpoint rather than just character design, because I feel like at some point, like I've never seen so many tutorials. I mean, I have a lot, and I've never seen so many in my life, and they just keep multiplying every day. So it's not a shortage of knowledge or information about how to draw. So it's not that. So what I'm going to do is do kind of a simple side view. Sometimes, so like if you're designing a character, it helps to either do like a front view, whether it's the figure or a portrait, and then like a profile. So at least you'll have those shapes, those silhouettes, and then you can always do the 3/4. And like that's just an idea. But obviously the character can kind of come about in any kind of sketch. So this is the basic proportion, and I'm going to stick with just this light color, which I don't really do that often in general, and also in the videos I haven't really done that, but it's a good idea, especially if you're going to incorporate color. And also you can use pencil. Like I said, I would have normally done it with pencil. So when you're still figuring out a character, it's really about the kind of the shape and the silhouette and the proportions. You can give it a little bit of perspective, because there is some perspective in this scene. So to do that, just kind of establish the ground line, like where the feet might be. And again, this isn't the final look of a character either, just like this won't be the final look. And of course they can have different costumes, but in general they'll have a style, because so people can tell what character it is. So that's 10 minutes. Yeah, I'll just keep working on this, and if I don't get to like all of the background, then that's okay. I'll start another 10-minute timer. So that's the other thing too. If sometimes, like with this, I kind of rushed because I wanted to get it finished, because I had this one, and then And then that's really what happened. I was too tired and like I wasn't thinking, and so I accidentally overworked it. But then again, I like this style too, so there's that. I think what's most important is obviously if you can get it to be correct, that's nice. However, being able to redraw something or fix something, or just having the ability to draw and paint is the best feeling, really, rather than that idea of I don't want to mess up because then I'm going to have to, like, I don't know how to like redraw it or something like that. Like if that's the struggle, like if the struggling is drawing, then yeah, that's why you want to get good at drawing. And there's different ways of fixing things. Like I showed you the white paint, and then basically kind of doing a different style, because trying to redraw the exact same picture isn't very fun, especially if you messed up on it, because it's gonna cloud your judgment, as it were. So I'm gonna keep her design. So I'm doing this character, kind of simple, kind of like concept art right now. And the more you draw a character, the more you develop it and learn how to draw the character. And I kind of like keeping it sort of in the background with the color, and having this be more prominent, but like blending it also. So you'll notice that there is some perspective, like, because we had established some of the perspective right here. So things will get kind of smaller. So this is the checkpoint. And then what I'll do is I'll use the initial, because here I had used the green predominantly to sketch the characters, but I'll use the green as not the darkest, but it'll be the dark. So this is the first pass, like we've talked about, which is the sketch. And then in the second pass, I'm going to establish the overall like light and dark pattern. So, and then I probably won't even really mess with the background just yet. I'm just going to do this, because if you do it in stages, that's kind of what I'm saying with this. That's why I overworked it, because if you skip the stages, you end up overworking it. You draw stuff that you don't need to draw, and you mess up the pattern, or like just the drawing's not good. So with that in mind, as I do this, maybe I won't zoom in because there's not that much space here, but I can talk about, so one thing I've noticed, if you look at the light here, I do like sort of the lighting situation here. Now, of course, it doesn't have to be exactly like this, because this sort of implies maybe clouds kind of passing and casting shadows and stuff, but I like the feel of that. So in general, it looks like the light is coming from like the left side. But then, because this character is next to that particular tree, I'm gonna, and plus I want to have more midtone, I'm just gonna use this as kind of the midtone, which means I can kind of outline the character. So when you're drawing, and again, we're going into intermediate, so I want to point these kind of things out. The basic part, or the beginner part, is this. Like, if you can draw this, this is what you need to learn how to do, is this kind of stuff. And if this part is kind of difficult, then that's like the skill that you're needing, is how to construct the figure, how to compose it, like the perspective of it and stuff. So that's what all my other videos are about, or like I said, there's a ton of tutorials out there, but that's like the beginner level. The more intermediate level is just organizing the process. so that yeah, like sometimes you'll have to fix things, and by fixing it, you also can develop a character that way too. So just getting to the point where you're not afraid of drawing and painting, basically. So what was I talking about? Oh yeah, I was gonna say that there's different stages of developing a drawing or an illustration, because that's kind of my specialty, is illustration and like character design and stuff, or concept art. Or maybe that's my specialty, but I like it. I don't know if it is my specialty, but that's my favorite thing. And world building. So yeah. So when you're developing the work, it's good to go in stages. And by that I mean, like, this should look pretty good already, and that's the beginner part of it. But even as an intermediate artist, you should be able to like leave this in your sketchbook and it'll be okay. You could come back to it and know where you're at. So it's like the outline, or literally the outline, or like the rough draft kind of thing. The next thing would be the second pass, which is figuring out the light and dark pattern. And you can be outline, you can outline and be kind of cartoony or simple about it, but remember that outlining is light and dark. That's why there's an outline. Otherwise, there would be no shape to see. So with that said, I'm going to just kind of stick with the design. So that's the other thing. If you're designing the character, it's good to kind of just stick with what you have and then develop it from there, rather than just coming up with a completely different design. And then once you start to get the character, then you can put them in different costumes. So I'm just going to go off of this and basically a profile view. Like, so notice that that's what I was saying earlier. Kind of having a front view and a side view is good. And the other thing I wanted to point out was not only working in stages, but also the size of the picture matters. So you can only get so much detail, like with a portrait that's this size. Same with the costume, you can only get so much detail. But that's what I was saying about if I'm still figuring out a character, I like to keep it kind of small like this so I can figure out the silhouette. So I'm going to use this green as basically the midtone, and then I can fix things. So I know that I'm going to render the tree a little bit, and I'll do my best to keep my hand out of because it focuses on my hand. And I would still keep it pretty loose. Now, if you want to adjust some of the contour, or like the silhouette, then yeah, it depends on if you're using color or not. If you're using a pen, I would be, or like a black pen, I'd be kind of loose about it. And just make sure you get the silhouette going. And it'll give you an idea of what the character will look like. That's 10 minutes. I'll do another one and just kind of focus on this. Take it as far as I can. Definitely don't rush, otherwise you just have to redo it. But as far as what I was saying about this, it's blurring, isn't it? What was I gonna say? Yeah, like the size of like you want to keep that in mind. that's also the other thing too, is like with this one, like the size of it does matter as far as like the shapes. So you can only get so much detail, and that's just something you kind of learn about. And like I was saying, it's better to be less is more kind of thing, but sometimes you slip up. So yeah, I'm gonna keep it pretty loose. Also, the approach, like from the previous video, if you're interested, you can see how I built up this. But then I spent like another maybe 30 minutes detailing it. And obviously I brought out a lot of the character in that way. But that actually is a good way to work. I mean, I already like know that, but like I like to experiment, so. But the way that I did this, you can get a lot of character that way. But then this can also be kind of bold as far as like the silhouette of the character. This is kind of a mix. I'm going to be a little bit loose with it, because like the character is in there. It's kind of like with sculpting, like the sculpture is in the stone, and you're just kind of chiseling away, and then also with the values you're like pulling out the positive space, but then here you're chipping away at the positive space and leaving the empty space around. As far as sorry if it's blurring and stuff, it's just how it is. I'll just move my hand so you can see. As far as like the tree, so remember we're coming like from that, like that's the idea, but that's a thumbnail. And so part of why I wanted to call this artistic checkpoint and not just character design is because I did want to show like stuff like this, like the tree, how to develop. Now I could have kept, so here the tree is kind of a silhouette, but here you can kind of play up because of the characters, like there's forms and stuff here. You can play up the form of the tree. And then because you're using this light color, you can get away with, because you're going to go like darker than this, like to a certain extent. Like you can, like you're giving yourself kind of an option. And there's probably going to be like shading, for example, because she's sort of in the shade here, but not really a cast shadow right now. And then also, as it goes further away, you don't have to use the same values, you don't have to use the same colors. Part of what I'm doing is just developing this character, and part of it is sketching, just making it fit into the sketchbook. Sometimes it's good if you're wanting to do this montage kind of thing to change the subject or like the scale of the picture so that it's kind of its own thing, like its own scene. And yeah, this will be the last like 10-minute session. I don't want to rush because it just creates more work. So for example, if by the end of this I have something kind of like this, I guess I'll give her arrows. Maybe a bow. So that's kind of what I mean. Like if you're still just sketching, don't worry too much about the detail. It's just kind of the feel of it. And there's a lot of information in stuff like this that's good, that reads, as I like to say. Like it tells you a lot just by glancing at it. And then if you can sort of leave it at this stage, you'll notice that it works as a sketch. Like it fits. And when you're having more of an idea, like if you can see it more clearly. Also, the other thing is you can leave yourself some room if you want to look up like reference for like the bows or whatever, cloaks. Like I like to look up stuff like that. Then you'll get more ideas of what the character will look like. The next stage might be, I kind of like using the gray, honestly, like this gray color. I kind of like using that, but I might use that for like the next sort of. So for example, this is kind of the light and dark, but it's also sort of the mid-tone. So this would be still kind of the second pass of like the light and dark. It would still give me a way to basically, I could use, well, you could see that this gets pretty dark just by using like a dark purple or dark blue color. So that still gives me another step that I can use to adjust. But like if I know that she's going to have boots, I can just go ahead and kind of add shadows. If I'm going to give her gloves, I can just do that. So like those areas, parts where I can see what's going on. And then the next thing would be just, like detailing, getting the silhouettes, the shapes better. But I don't want to rush. I don't always want to record stuff like that. I mean, I have plenty of videos that show how to do it, because that's also kind of distracting. But yeah, you don't want to rush like your artwork. I think I do this because, I mean, like it's helpful to a certain extent, but then at the end of the day, you're wanting to have a good artwork. So yeah. Well, I want to wrap up this session. I want to thank you for joining me for today's drawing routine. And if you like these videos, please support the channel. And until next time, keep on sketching.